What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down some examples of good versus bad route running. So we're going to be showing some bad examples of routes, and then we're going to be showing a good example of the exact same route versus the exact same coverage and how you should run it. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a receiver and you would like a daily workout schedule that you can follow on the field, check out that very first link in the description below for our 8-week wide receiver on-field workout plan. What you'll get access to is over 200 plus wide receiver route running, press release, catching drills, all mapped out into a daily schedule. Like Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing that. We give you video examples of each drill, everything that you could think of, fellas. So very first link in that description below if you're interested. Let's get started with this video. So this first example here is Garrett Wilson running this like stop route versus a zone coverage DB. So this is a bad example of the route, and then we're going to show a good example of Jeudy working the exact same type of route versus the same coverage. So when he's running up on this route, most important thing, anytime that you have a zone coverage DB, is you have to know where to attack. So I have a zone coverage guy, right? Anytime that you're facing a zone coverage DB on the outside, whether it's cover 3, whether it's cover 4, they're trying to prevent what? They're trying to prevent a deep ball, right? If they're in the deep third of the field, let's say this is cover 3, their job, do not get beat deep, right? So if my routes, anytime that I have an inside breaking route, anytime I have a route that stops, I obviously have to make them think that I'm going deep to get them to bail out of there. Now, more in particular, if I have a route where I stop or I have a route where I break inside, we want to attack an area on a DB called the blind spot. So the blind spot is the area where the DB's back, between the DB's back and the sideline, right? So he cannot see over here. So that is where we want to try to angle my stem. I want to try to work to this blind spot to maybe force him to widen or maybe even get him to open up, right? But now what Garrett Wilson does here is when he's pushing and he's attacking, he never gets to this blind spot enough. He just kind of runs at this DB's front hip, which is not necessarily bad at first, but you eventually have to threaten that blind spot to make him think fade. He can still see us from here. He could still feel our speed from here. And that's why it's an easy break for him on that ball. Because and the ball was thrown on time too. This ball was thrown early. This was just a perfect break on the ball because we didn't threaten him enough with the fade. And I like Garrett Wilson as much as anybody. You guys all know this, but this is just an example of, again, one of the most explosive players in the NFL, can run routes extremely well, can drop into his breaks extremely well. But I say this because for you younger wide receivers who want to improve your game, it's more than just being the fastest on the field. It's more than just being the most explosive on the field, having the best routes. You also got to know how to run the routes. How can I use these different things, right? So if we don't push to that blind spot, and I'm going to show a good example of this in a second, that DB is going to be able to sit. He's not threatened by that fade. So let's look at this route from Jeudy. So this is an example of a DB who's in zone. His eyes are to the inside. He starts to bail out of there and turn. And this blind spot is going to be here. So I want you guys to pay attention to the separation that Jeudy gets on this route because he pushes to that blind spot. And again, it's not a ton of separation, but this is all we need as a wide receiver. Guys, we do not need 10 yards of space every single time. I need 2-3 yards of space, maybe 2-3, so I can catch the ball and go make something happen with the ball in my hand. That's why we want separation. So again, you look at what Jeudy does with his route. He's running the same type of route. He's pushing vertical. He's attacking right at his hip to begin with. The only difference is that on that route with Garrett Wilson, he kept running here, and then he would break. You see what Jeudy does. He pushes vertical, and then he gets to this blind spot. This is what threatens the DB the most with the fade. We want to make him think that we were just trying to run around him. We're trying to get around him and go deep. And then we put the brakes on when we are in that blind spot. Because again, at this point, he can't see us. He is going solely off of feel. So if I'm attacking that blind spot with good speed, with good stride, with good pad level, you see again, good body language, good stride, good speed. Everything about that is what we always talk about with selling fade. Now he's just running at a different spot of the defender to get that space. That's a textbook route there from Jeudy, and that's what you guys want to try to do. Right? Again, like let's go back. Let's think of it like a different route. Like let's say I'm running another inside, because like I would consider a stop route an inside breaking route. It's kind of like a hitch, right? But let's say, for example, I had to run a dig or I had to run a post. And let's say I just ran right at this DB's hip and then broke out. That DB would be right on my hip the entire time because he could see us. He could still feel us. But if I'm running this post and I go to this blind spot and I get him to widen, bam, I break to the post. Now all of a sudden I got a bigger window. I got a little bit of separation. I'm not running right into his safety help because when he's in zone, we know he has safety help because he wouldn't play zone with no help to the inside, right? So, fellas, it's more than just the stop route. This is just for any type of inside breaking route when you're going up against that zone coverage DB on the outside. So now, next example here, this is going to be a route from Terry McLaurin, and we're going to be comparing it to a good route of this example, or this type of break, I should say, with Tank Dell, right? So this is an example of not dropping violently into your breaks and having that violent hip drop. So when we get into a break, right, guys, you hear it all the time from receiver coaches. Hey, you want to sink your hips, you got to drop your hips, right? All these different things, right? Why is it important that we get low at the break point? We get low so we can slow ourselves down and stop and cut. So when I get to this break point and I drop my hips, or AKA sink my hips, the slower we get to that low, like, so right here is, I would probably say, the magic position. 90 degrees with your lower body. And I would say you want your chest to be like somewhat slightly leaning forward, not past your knees, but chest, like I say, chest to quad. This is a perfect position to get to, but it's how he got to there. The slower you drop into the break, the slower you're going to be at the break. The faster you drop into the break, the faster you're going to be at the break. It's simple, guys. So when he drops into this break, you see how he starts this break maybe 3 yards from where he's supposed to be, and you see how he drifts upfield. That long drift, those extra steps, that slow drop of the hips. The second this DB feels us drop our hips, whether it's fast or slow, he's breaking on the ball. I would like my hip drop to be fast and violent so he doesn't have as much time to react, and so it doesn't take me 3 yards to stop. The quicker we get to this 90-degree position, the faster we're going to stop. So your mindset should be, I tell my wide receivers this all the time, musical chairs. You're playing musical chairs. Music stops. What do? You drop into the chair as fast as possible, right? You sit down. So that's what I need at the break point. Music stops, we sit down. We get to 90 right away. Now, this is much easier said than done. It requires a lot of leg strength, a lot of ankle stability, a lot of balance to be able to get to that 90-degree spot quickly, and explosiveness for that matter. But again, that's what you need to work on as a wide receiver. That's why in the gym, you should be training for specific movements, position-specific movements, single leg exercises, box jumps, like hang cleans, something, all these things that just make you more explosive. That's what you need to be focusing on, because that will translate to your game. And not only running the actual routes, I'm working on the actual routes. So let's look at this example here from Tank Dell. And I'm assuming all of you, if you know Tank Dell and you've seen his film, know how this is going to go. This guy is very, very explosive at the top of the route. It's a similar break. It's a different coverage for sure. I honestly think it's harder to get separation against this look because this is off man. This DB's watching our hips. The last example was zone, and that DB had his eyes to the inside. So I think this one's actually harder, but Tank Dell's able to get separation here. Let's look at the example. So he goes into the break, violent drop. Again, the quicker we get to that low position, the quicker we are going to stop. You look at this example from Dell. He drops, and it takes him maybe 2 yards to come to a complete stop. That is what we want. The quicker we drop my hips, the quicker my break is going to be, and the less time the DB has to react. So let's talk about the differences here, right? You see how as soon as he decides to break, he's dropping to that 90-degree spot. They call that snapping down. You want to snap your body language down. How quick can you drop down? I have probably 3 analogies that I use for my wide receivers to help with this. If you guys don't like the musical chairs one, that's one of them. The other one that I use, pretend there's a string attached to your chin and somebody is pulling the string straight down to your knee as fast as they can. Like literally somebody grabbed it and pulled as fast as they could. And then another one I use is that somebody threw a punch at your head. When somebody throws a punch at your head, what do? You duck, you drop. So that's what we need. We need to be fast. Like somebody threw a jab, somebody threw a straight, you got to drop right now as violently as possible. Guys, if you guys can get this down and do these types of breaks, you will see yourself get so much more separation. And that's something that every wide receiver needs to work on, because maybe you don't run a stop route like this, but maybe you run a comeback, maybe you run a 5-yard hitch, maybe you run a dig where you got to drop your hips. Everybody's got to drop their hips. The routes will always differ, but the breaks always stay the same, and the mechanics of the breaks will always stay the same. So the more violent we are, the quicker the break is, less time DB has to make that recovery. So let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by Dell dropping into that route and creating space. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like an 8-week wide receiver on-field workout schedule, everything wide receivers need to be doing on the field for route running, we give you all those drills to work on snapping down like we mentioned in this video. So check out that very first link in the description below if you're interested. I'll see you guys next time.